Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 2nd. And today I want to talk about executive orders and how it seems to me that they have changed this country somewhat. And they go back 150 years. This is not a recent phenomenon. But now, with our divided nation and the inability to compromise, it has become apparent to me that the executive order is a very powerful tool. And as we could see over the last 2 or 3 presidents, it has been used when they knew that they were not going to get anything done with the Congress or the Senate. So the presidents have taken advantage of the ability to write an executive order. The greatest executive order of all time was the one that Abraham Lincoln wrote to free the slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation was actually an executive order, which later became the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. See, executive orders have a life of their own. They can be overturned by law, or they can be overturned by the next president. So writing an executive order is not a lifetime thing. It's not. We are not stuck with it forever. But we're not stuck with anything forever in this great country of ours because we can always have a law that's written or a constitutional amendment. However, in the past couple of years, I would say that it's probably more than a couple of years, maybe 10 or 12 years, we haven't been able to get together and do much of anything that was important. So let me talk to you a little bit about executive orders. The first thing you have to know is that the president under the Constitution can write these executive orders or memorandum. Second thing the Constitution says is that these executive orders cannot countermand any law that's on the books at that point in time. So if the president writes an executive order to overturn an executive order, that's okay. But he can't overturn the law by executive order. And Congress can grant the president some limited power to make rules on certain topics. For example, they might turn responsibility for the Transportation Safety Administration, and then the president could decide what people can bring on airplanes and minor things like that. So when Congress does that, they are allowing the president to pass on goals that they would like to have done without passing federal legislation. So it's like a quid pro quo, to make a deal, Now the president exercises this power through either an executive order or an executive memorandum. It's basically used to bypass the bureaucracy in Congress and advance policy objectives without having to go through the legislative process. So it's a way of getting around Congress and the Senate. When you know that the country's divided the way it is and nothing will happen for months. On the other hand, an executive memorandum, it's like an executive order, but it doesn't have the same procedural requirements. It has to be signed, but it doesn't have to be made public. It doesn't have to be approved by the Office of Management and Budget and the Attorney General. And it doesn't have to be recorded in the Federal Register. So it's kind of like a little note that somebody sent out, but it still has lethal implications. Now, both the executive order and the executive memorandum can be terminated in several ways. The first way is that an incoming president can write an executive order that countermands or eliminates a previous executive order. And that's not unusual when the new president comes in and wants to change some policy goals or something, right? And this has been done many times. It's being more frequently done due to the division in this country. Then we have Congress. Congress can override an executive order or a memorandum expressly or by eliminating the funding necessary to carry it out, or they can rewrite a law. They can write a law changing it. that contradicts the executive order. But Congress's overriding of executive orders is very rare, because in order to overrule an executive order by a sitting president will almost certainly be vetoed by that president. And so in today's environment, highly partisan environment, getting 2/3 of the majority necessary to override a presidential veto is extremely difficult. So most executive orders stand until the next president takes action on them. And then, of course, there are the courts. The courts can determine that an executive order was written and it's outside the authority of the president to write that particular type of order, or it's blatantly unlawful. But that's extremely difficult also. So when a president writes an order, he's usually looking at the Constitution or his power of commander-in-chief, or at some specific statute which the courts tend to defer to. So if you write an executive order that affects the civil rights of individual or groups, that would probably be overturned. But otherwise, you can get away with pretty much anything in an executive order. So why did I choose to talk about executive orders? Mainly because somebody asked me a question about the difference between what Biden is doing and what Obama did and what Trump did, and all of them writing executive orders. And Biden has written more executive orders than any president before him in this short period of time. Now, of course, he wrote 10 executive orders relating to COVID-19. So I think that many incoming presidents weren't faced with that particular problem. And then he wrote a lot of executive orders countermanding the ones that President Trump wrote. So it's a powerful tool, and it has to be used wisely. And what we've seen in this country, and the division between our people in this country, and the division between Congress and the Senate, the president's hands are almost tied, and he has to use the one resource to get things done, and it happens to be executive orders and executive memoranda. So it's a sad picture that using the executive order paints of this country right now. It's just the consequences of the shape this country is in right now. So let's hope that Biden's executive orders get the place straightened out, and that maybe the next incoming president won't have to be rewriting the current president's executive orders. Maybe some of them will become law. Maybe the future of this country lies in executive orders. And that's a terrible, terrible way to look at it. That just indicates how badly split we are. So that's all I want to say this morning, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.